So guys, now let us discuss with the static NAT straight away. So what is static NAT? Static NAT simply means that change the source address of the packet which is crossing this firewall device from IP address X to IP address Y, right? So let's say as an administrator, I install the static NAT rule on this firewall device, and my rule says that if source address of the packet is 10.1.1.2, then change it to 100.1.1.2 for all the packets which are going from inside to outside. So this is my static NAT rule. Why it is called static? Because the user explicitly specifying that which source address has to be updated to which address. Here I am specifying that if source address is 10.1.1.2, then explicitly update it to 100.1.1.2. Alright. So in this diagram, you can see that let's say we have an organization which has its private network. An organization has installed its firewall device or a gateway device to protect its private network from the unauthorized or unprotected access from the public network, which is internet. Internet is highly insecure. Alright. And let's say there is some machine which is present inside the private network of the organization, and the organization has assigned a private address to this machine which is 10.1.1.2. And let's say that this machine wants to communicate with some machine which is present on the public network or internet. And therefore, let's say the IP address that is assigned to this machine is a public IP address 100.1.1.1. Alright. Now, when the source machine, that is the machine which is present inside the private network, wants to communicate with the destination machine on the public network, this machine would generate a packet, and in that packet, obviously the source address would be the IP address of its own, that is 10.1.1.2. And since it wants to communicate with the machine on the public network, it will specify the IP address of that machine as destination IP address in the IP header of the packet, which is 100.1.1.1. As simple as that, right? Now, when this packet crosses this firewall, the firewall will apply this rule on this packet. And this rule simply says that if the source address is 10.1.1.2, change it to 100.1.1.2, as simple as that. Right? So you can see that the source address of the packet has been updated. Alright. So this is a static NAT. In the next lecture video, I will show you that what is the real world problem this is static NAT solve. In this lecture video, simply understand that simply make yourself familiar with some terminologies. So static NAT means change the source address of the packet from X to Y. This is what static NAT rule means. And once the user has installed this rule on a firewall device, this rule implicitly installs the second rule. That is, the second rule is automatically enforced. And the second rule is nothing. Second rule says that change the destination address of the packet from X to Y in the opposite direction. So you can see that this is the rule which the user has configured. If you were to write the opposite of this rule, that is the implied rule, what would be that? That rule would be that if destination address of the packet is 100.1.1.2, then update it to or change it to 10.1.1.2 if packet is going from outside to inside. Alright. So the user has configured this rule, but this rule automatically installs its opposite rule on the firewall device. Right? Now let us take this example. When this machine receives this packet, this machine will process something and it will generate a reply. When this machine generates a reply, it will generate a packet in which source address of the packet will be its own IP address, which is 100.1.1.1, and the destination IP address of the packet will be the packet from where this packet came from. So you can see that source and destination IP address in the reply packet has been swapped, or it has been interchanged, right? This is how reply is generated by the machine. Now when this packet crosses this firewall, the firewall will apply all those network address translation rules which are applicable for all the packets which are traveling from outside to inside. Alright, and therefore firewall will enforce this rule on the packet. And this rule says that if destination address of the packet is 100.112, change it to 10.112. Right? So you can see that this is the resultant packet which is obtained when this particular packet crosses the firewall boundary from outside interface to inside interface. Alright, and then you can see that the destination IP address in this packet is 10.112 and the source IP address in this packet is 100.111, which is exactly opposite of the packet that was originally generated by this source machine. Alright, so based on the destination IP address of the packet, the inside private network of this organization would route this packet in such a way that this packet would be received by this original host machine. Alright, the internal private infrastructure of the organization knows how to route the packet with destination IP address equal to the private addresses. So here the destination IP address of the packet is a private address. So this is how Static NAT works. The administrator install the rule, its converse rule or the opposite rule is automatically installed or enforced on the device. And this static rule is one-on-one mapping. I've already explained that why it is one-on-one mapping. And there are certain terminologies that you can get familiar with. 10.112 is called real IP address. Why it is called real? Because it is the IP address that would be subjected to change. Whereas 100.112 is called the translated or mapped IP address. That is, this is the IP address to which the real IP address is updated to, right? So we call such IP addresses as mapped IP address. When the opposite of NAT rule is enforced, it is called untranslation. So this is called untranslation. When the converse rule of the static NAT is enforced on the packet, then we call it as untranslation. Whereas when the IP addresses in the packet is changed as per the original rule which is configured by the user, then we called it as translation. Right? So this is important to identify that which one is translation, which one is untranslation. Static NAT is bidirectional. Bidirectional means that, so let us give this name, let us say that this is a host machine H1 and let us say that this is the host machine H2. So bidirectional means that H2 can also initiate the communication or H1 can also initiate the communication. So the communication can be initiated by either of these machines, either from inside network or from outside network. We will see that there are certain NAT rules which doesn't allow this. Those NAT rules are unidirectional. Alright. So this is what static NAT is. Now in the next lecture video, I will show you the real world problem which static NAT solves. In this lecture video, you just understand that how static NAT changes the IP addresses in the IP header of the packet when the packet crosses the firewall boundary. Alright, but you must be wondering that why would anybody do that? Or in what scenarios would anybody enforce such a rule on the packet which is crossing the firewall boundary? What problem does it solve? So in the next lecture video, we will going to discuss that what actual problem or the real world problem static NAT solves.